All right, everybody, welcome aboard. So today, what I thought I would cover for y'all, this might be a little bit of a palate cleanser, and it might not be the full 30 minutes today, but what I thought we would do, competition is heating up, y'all. If you haven't seen it yet, it is happening. I personally just wrote yesterday morning, I wrote the 6th offer that I have written for a single client. And some of them were upwards of $20,000 and $30,000 over asking price. All right. So the market is heating up. Competition is getting stiffer. For the cream puff homes, competition is very, very stiff. For the average non-cream puff homes, that stuff can stick around for a little while. But if your client is out there in this market, there's a real good chance that they're going to find a home that they fall in love with, and it's going to have multiple offers. So based off of that, I wanted to arm you guys with some tools, i.e. the formal backup offer. All right. So let's talk a little bit about a formal backup offer, why you want to use it, examples of it, and how it can be very, very effective. All right. I'm going to stand here. I will tell you, if I had a Bible, I would put my hand and swear upon it as we speak. I can tell you and name to you right now about a half a dozen of my previous clients who are sitting in their new home or their new to them home today because I took the time, energy, and effort to do a backup offer for them. Okay, including my very own mother and father who are sitting in a home up in Ball Ground that I helped them purchase 2 years ago. And it was with a backup offer that was truly a backup offer that was already under contract. And then that offer fell through. My parents came, that we were able to seize that opportunity, and they are living in that home to this very day. And that's just one of about a half a dozen examples. All right. A full service agent is going to take that extra effort and time to submit that backup offer and monitor it and track it throughout the life cycle. Okay. An agent that takes shortcuts, that is not acting in their client's best interest, that is the kind of agent that will refuse to do a backup offer. All right. I'm also a listing agent. I have a listing that I am in due diligence on as we speak right now. And I would love to have a formal backup offer. I received multiple offers on my listing. We accepted an offer. I went to the next second and third place positions and asked them to submit a formal backup offer. Do you want to take a guess how many of them did? Big time goose eggs. All right. My seller, because my seller also worked with me, and I think we did several backup offers with them when I helped them buy that house 3 years ago. My seller is asking me, hey, can you go back to them and ask them about doing a formal backup offer? And I'm like, man, I already have. They won't do it. They will do something short of it. And we're going to talk about this here in a minute. They'll say, well, why don't you call us if everything goes to hell in a handbasket? How many people have heard that before? Call me when your primary offer falls through, and then we'll submit a backup offer. It's too late at that point. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now. We're going to get into the presentation, and we will continue. Any questions starting off from anybody? Let's launch right in. So the backup offer. Why do you want to submit a backup offer? Well, first off, National Association of Real Estate says that roughly 3/4 of all contracts that are written will actually make it to the closing table. So if only 3/4 are making it to the closing table, then basically 1 in 4 is going to fall through. Okay. So there's 1 out of 4 contracts that are written are never going to make it to the closing table. So wouldn't you want to improve your chances of winning on those 25% that are falling through? All right. Another reason why you want to submit a backup offer is when you are working with a client and they haven't submitted an offer yet. when you do that backup offer, the first thing hopefully you're doing before you submit that backup offer is sending them a buyer's brokerage agreement. And that is locking them in to working with you because you've done that backup offer. Okay. If you don't go through the process of submitting the backup offer, you're not going to have that buyer's brokerage agreement. And now you don't have that client, that buyer client married to you for several months. Okay. Submitting the backup offer is a great way to earn credibility with your buyer or your listing client. You gain credibility, you gain a level of professionalism because frankly, you can puff your chest out and say, look, I'm doing something that a lot of agents won't do, and I will submit a formal backup offer for you. All right. It shows your dedication and your commitment to service your client. Let's talk about this next one. How does it help?
Hey, can you go back? Can you
Sure.
go back for me? I'm not understanding what the buyer brokerage agreement has to do with. My phone went out a little bit, so I didn't hear you. What does the buyer brokerage agreement have to do with?
Sure.
The backup?
So when you submit your initial offer, in order for you to be able to submit the offer and say this person is a client, not a customer, you can't call them a customer without a buyer's brokerage agreement. So say you're working with a buyer and you haven't gotten to the stage yet where you've written an offer, so you don't have a buyer's brokerage agreement with them. Okay, so then when you decide, okay, let's go ahead. We lost out on the offer for this home, but we can still do a backup offer. That's when you can then submit do the buyer's brokerage agreement, and now you've got them locked in to a 90-day buyer's brokerage agreement that you would not really have until further down in the stage.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. All right. How does submitting a backup offer, you submitting a buyer backup offer, how does it help the listing agent? What do you guys think? Go ahead, somebody.
I think it helps them because if that offer, what's at the closing table does, fall through, that they automatically have, a backup, as in the title, backup offer.
Absolutely. It also helps them to negotiate from a much stronger position. And so here's what I've got this later in my slides. You know what? Stick a pin in that. Let's come back to it. Frankly, it is the right thing to do. All right. I love this. Say multiple offers one more time. That's one of my favorite memes from back in the day. All right. So when are you going to use that backup offer? Essentially, after a lot of times you're submitting the backup offer after you've lost in that multiple offer situation. Okay. You can also end up submitting it when you come late to the game and maybe you just found that listing. Who here has had a listing, found it on the MLS, and by the time you can schedule a showing, it's already under contract? Happens all the time in those scenarios. That's where you can reach out to that agent and you can say, hey, would you be willing to show the home for a potential backup offer? And that still can get you in the door. All right. That backup offer is going to put your buyer basically first in line if the primary offer that they have falls through. Okay. And it is going to be effective upon the termination of the primary offer. Okay, so your backup offer is basically a full-blown contracted, signed agreement with one little provision in it that says, here's a backup contingency exhibit. This does not become effective until your primary offer falls through. Okay, gives your client that first right of refusal. Basically, they can come back and say, I either want it or I don't. Right. That backup offer is, as I just mentioned, it is a fully executed, signed by all parties. It is a full-blown purchase and sale agreement with all of the associated exhibits attached to it. including one additional, that GAR Form F604, which is the backup contingency exhibit. And we're going to look at it in greater detail here in just a second. Let's talk about what a backup offer is not. A backup offer is not that verbal, hey, we'll call you when everything falls through. Okay, that is not a backup offer. A backup offer is not a top drawer offer. What do I mean by top drawer offer? The offer that you submitted that didn't win in the multiple offer situations, that they take and they turn around and they put it in the top drawer of their desk and they pull it out whenever their primary falls through. Okay, same kind of a concept. The reality of it is most agents out there do not understand the concept of a backup offer, and you will most likely have to educate your co-op agent if you are going to submit a backup offer to them. Let's talk about the advantages of the backup offer. Essentially, your client can submit that backup offer and they don't have to stop shopping. They can continue to go look for their absolute perfect home, but have some security knowing that a home that they did like may still be in play and they still could get the opportunity to seize on that home. Okay, when you have structured your agreement correctly, there is going to be no earnest money due until the backup offer becomes the primary. So your client isn't having to front any money. There's not having to be any earnest money being held by anyone. That is not an issue. There's no due diligence period or inspections until after the offer becomes the primary. Okay, so what you should be seeing, there's no real differentiation. There's no disadvantage to doing a backup offer other than it takes you a few minutes of time to do a backup contingency exhibit and get it signed. All right. This is where I was talking about giving the listing agent that the ability to negotiate from a stronger position. Here's what you can say. This is a script that if you haven't heard it before from a listing agent, you will soon. The seller's not going to be really inclined to give to agree to a long list of repairs during due diligence because we have a very strong backup offer already in place. That's kind of a veiled threat. Let's just be honest. It's kind of a veiled threat telling everybody, hey, we're probably not going to agree to a whole lot of stuff simply because we've got a better offer in the wings. All right. So when you do an offer and you then turn around and submit it as a backup offer, this is often what you will have the process by which you will do this. All right. So this is a scenario. I pulled this directly from one of my files, one of my client files. This is a home that we put an offer on back in 2020 on February. We obviously did not win that bidding war. And in order to submit the backup offer, all I simply did was went in, did a strike through here and said, we're going to close 30 days after the binding agreement date, get initials. Why did I highlight the earnest money being due 3 days after and 10 days of due diligence? Anybody? Because none of them come into play until after the binding agreement date, right? So we've set the trigger for all of this as the binding agreement date. Well, guess what? When you do a backup offer, it gets fully signed and executed, but it's not binding until it becomes the primary. All right. So due diligence doesn't start until you have been notified that you're now the primary offer. Earnest money is not due until in this case 3 days after. And the due diligence period of 10 days doesn't even start. You don't have to worry about scheduling inspections, none of that until after you have become the primary offer. This makes sense to everybody? Any questions?
And so if they accept, is it kind of like, are they accepting it? Like, I mean, what I mean is, if they say okay and the deal falls through, and then they say, oh, but somebody else is going to give us more than you, can they do that?
No. Your client, if you have a fully signed, fully executed backup contingency offer, they are obligated to offer it to you first. You have first right of refusal. They have to come to you first. Okay. Put your client
Thank
first
you.
in line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So let me get back on my screens. Here we go. All right. So you're now looking at the offer. So then you have this backup contingency exhibit that gets added to it. All right. And it's I think it's a one, maybe 2 pages, this page and a signature page. But it is a fairly simple document, and it basically reads: buyer and seller acknowledge this is an agreement is a backup or a secondary agreement to the primary agreement, which may be amended from time to time. And it specifically lists the primary agreement. Guess what? Do you know this information? When you're submitting this, you don't know what the date, the binding agreement date of the primary offer is, or who that buyer, that seller and the buyer are. You don't know this information. So these 2 fields you're going to basically leave blank when you are submitting your backup offer, and the listing agent will fill these in for you. Okay. And I love this provision in it, this agreement. If this agreement has not become the primary by a certain date, then essentially the buyer can terminate the agreement. So in other words, if it doesn't look like the buyer, the buyer's going to come into the primary position, that the secondary position is not going to be available, then they can get out. Okay, let's talk about the trigger. If you have done a backup contingency exhibit and you have gotten it signed and completely executed, when does it get triggered? It gets triggered when the primary offer falls through. So these are the instructions essentially that you're going to have to agree upon with the listing agent that you have the backup agreement with. And you're going to simply say, if and when the primary falls through, they are going to provide you with that GAR notice indicating the primary has fallen through and the backup is your backup is now their primary. Okay. And it should also include the binding agreement dates was going to start upon that notice, and that is going to be your new trigger for things like earnest money being due, due diligence being due, when the closing is going to take place. All of that becomes that trigger. Okay. All right, so then you see here is the actual GAR notice form. It is about the simplest document on the planet, and it's simply saying buyer or seller hereby gives notice of the parties of the following. And it would simply read something to the effect of buyer's primary offer or seller's primary offer has fallen through, backup offer now triggered. And the binding agreement date notification is right there. Go ahead, Letitia, what's your question?
Good question. So your client has the backup offer. As you said, they continue shopping and they find another property that they like. Can you withdraw your backup agreement, or you just refuse it when it comes?
Absolutely, you can withdraw it, and you should withdraw it. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. Good question. Great question. Okay. To Letitia's point, let's continue. Once you have that signed listing or signed backup and the trigger has taken place, basically when you have that notice, you have the binding agreement date notice. Basically, that at that point, this constitutes a complete offer package that you can then turn into the help desk, to the lender, to the closing attorney, and basically start processing, beginning it to work it as if it's a normal transaction. So you're basically doing contract to close at this stage of the game. And you navigate it all the way through to the closing table. All right. Then to Letitia's question, if the buyer submitted this backup offer and they find a different home and they want to place an offer on that home, then essentially I would keep the backup offer in place while you're submitting and negotiating that new offer. But essentially, as soon as your new offer goes binding, I would then immediately terminate the backup offer using the GAR notice to withdraw offer. Okay. questions that you have for me at this stage? It is remarkably simple. It's not difficult to do. If executed correctly, it can earn you credibility with your clients, and it can ultimately earn you more business. I have a half a dozen more transactions under my belt because of this process than I would have had normally, and I'm my wallet is probably a little bit thicker because of all of that. So take that as an advantage and why you would want to be motivated to do a backup offer for somebody. All right. Any last minute questions or alibis? Letitia, go ahead.
The example you showed us where you took your original offer and you just made amendments. That's all you have to do. You don't need to rewrite the whole thing or nothing.
Quite often it's that simple. All you have to do is go back and look at your closing dates. You know, you can't have a closing date of April 15th if you don't know when the primary is going to close. So you just got to time it to where it's 30 days after. So yeah, it's simple. You just make those edits, strike throughs. You can do a clean copy if you want to, but you don't have to.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody looking puzzled or questions? All right, folks. I got finished a few minutes early, so I'll cut you guys loose. If anybody's got anything, you know how to reach me. Looking forward to working with you throughout the weekend too.
Thank you, Jay.
Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
a lot, Jay. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jay. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.